Well, good morning and welcome to CBS News Mornings. I'm Anne-Marie Green here in New York. It's just about 7 o'clock. And here's a look at the stories grabbing our attention right now. We are learning more this morning about the victims gunned down in the racist attack at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York. We're following the president as he and the First Lady prepare to visit the city. Thousands of protesters took to the streets this weekend in support of abortion rights. We're going to show you how the issue continues to be a rallying cry for both sides of the political spectrum. And it's another potential blow to Russian President Vladimir Putin as Sweden signals plans to join Finland in a bid to join NATO. We're going to have more on the diplomatic strain that move could put on Russia as its troops face new setbacks in eastern Ukraine. Plus, as stocks continue to tumble, we are tackling the implications, or rather tracking the implications of a so-called bear market and what it might reveal about a possible recession. And the dramatic defamation trial between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp picks back up again today. We're going to tell you why the next witnesses scheduled could take the stand, and they could shake the case up in a major way.
If they are credible witnesses, then I think it could really hurt Depp's case. All she has to show is that there is at least one instance of domestic violence.
We'll hear from an attorney following the case about what to expect next. But we begin this morning, of course, in Buffalo, New York, where a community is grieving after a gunman opened fire at a supermarket Saturday. Police say 18-year-old Peyton Gendron killed 10 people and hurt 3 others in what is being now investigated as a hate crime. Our Bradley Blackburn is in front of that Tops grocery store in Buffalo with more on where the investigation stands now. Bradley, good morning.
Anne-Marie, good morning. Police continue to comb through the parking lot and store behind me as they continue their investigation. Overnight, they released the 10 names of all the people who died inside this grocery store. We know they range in age from 32 all the way to 86. People who were here to buy a birthday cake or get ingredients for dinner on Saturday night when they came face to face with hate.
The city of Buffalo, New York is in mourning after a mass shooting left 10 dead at a supermarket.
This is not open season on African Americans.
Investigators say suspect Peyton Gendron specifically targeted the store because he wanted to kill as many black people as possible. The 18-year-old has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder charges.
The evidence that we have uncovered so far makes no mistake that this is an absolute racist hate crime.
Last year, police questioned Gendron after he reportedly made threats at his high school in Conklin, New York.
They interviewed the subject and they felt it was appropriate at that time to have that individual brought in for a mental health evaluation. The state police did their job to the fullest that they could at that time.
Buffalo residents said they were astonished by the allegations.
It boggles my mind that this young man traveled 200 miles, 4 hours, to target our community. It just boggles the mind.
Police say Gendron live-streamed the attack, and though a spokesperson for the site Twitch insists it was pulled down within 2 minutes, it does raise questions about what more social media companies could or should be doing to prevent publicizing violence.
And if the suspect is convicted, the 18-year-old could face a possible life sentence without parole. One other note from here in Buffalo, this store was an anchor for this community, the only grocery store in a neighborhood where many people don't have a car to access other options. So while it remains closed, they are starting shuttle buses to take shoppers to other grocery stores, so they still have places to shop. It's one way, Anne-Marie, that Buffalo is determined this shooter won't take anything else from this community.
Right, and we really don't want to spend too much time on him, but I think it is rather interesting. You mentioned, in your reporting that authorities were aware of the suspect. Last year, he made threats to his high school. He had to undergo a mental health evaluation. What more can you tell us?
Well, we know that his parents are said to be cooperating with investigators. We also know that federal investigators are looking closely at a 180-page manifesto. They're trying to confirm the authenticity of that, filled with racist rantings, trying to understand his possible motive here. But yes, we do know that this suspect had previous run-ins at his school, had in fact threatened to shoot up the school, Anne-Marie. And so there are questions about why law enforcement didn't keep track of him after those incidents.
And certainly, how did he get his hands on weapons? He was heavily armed, wearing tactical gear. How do we know anything about how he got his hands on those things?
We don't know yet, Anne-Marie. It's not clear how he got the weapons, whether he had help, whether they crossed state lines. So those are the questions that investigators are looking at right now, and also looking at why New York's red flag laws didn't go into place here. Those were laws that were designed to help prevent mass shootings from happening, giving law enforcement tools to monitor potential threats. And there are real questions as to why that didn't happen, Anne-Marie.
Yeah, Bradley, thank you very much. So Nancy Chen is also in Buffalo. She spoke with people in the community, clearly still in mourning over this devastating loss. You spoke to friends, you spoke to neighbors. Nancy, good morning.
Anne-Marie, good morning to you. As Bradley mentioned, this is the only grocery store in this area. It is a community mainstay, and all weekend long we have seen the community coming here together, paying their respects, and also remembering the lives lost.
My husband worked as a cop, as a security at that Tops. Are you kidding me?
Outside Tops grocery store, there was disbelief.
This was an act of evil. Evil.
And sorrow.
My 13-year-old daughter and my lifetime partner watched a family member shot in the face.
In a neighborhood Black residents call a food desert, the Tops Market is a vital lifeline.
If you live over here, this is the only grocery store you really have access to.
Christina McKinnon questioned why the gunman targeted Buffalo.
You said that a lot of people are expecting people to be sad, but you said you're also mad.
Yeah, we're mad. We're not sad. We're angry. We're angry as hell.
In the crowd, 3 women from different parts of the city meeting for the first time.
But we have to reach out to one another and not be so separate.
What do you think when you hear that?
I think that there's hope. It just brings me hope. And I know that, there may be a lot of hate out there, but love always wins. That's what I know. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
So we see how the community is reacting to this, a mix of sadness, and they're mad as well. That was clear. What more are we learning about the victims here?
Well, Anne-Marie, at this point, we are learning more about the lives that were lost here, the age range of those who perished and died behind me here at this Tops grocery store, age ranging from 32 to 86 years old. For officials giving that list of those who died here. Also, 3 people who did survive their injuries. But we are learning more about those lives lost, including a retired police officer who's working as a security guard here, beloved in this community. And he's being hailed as a hero this morning, in part because he did try to stop the gunman by shooting at him after he came charging into the store. Unfortunately, the body armor protected the shooter and wasn't able to penetrate his body armor, but he is being hailed as a hero. There's also an 86-year-old grandmother who stopped by the grocery store after visiting her husband who's ailing in a nursing home, stopping by just to pick up groceries because, as we mentioned, this is the only grocery store in this area. Saturday afternoon, a lot of families here who were at the time just running errands when all of this happened.
That is heartbreaking. We know that the president and the first lady are going to be visiting Buffalo. Do we know what the plan is there, who they're going to meet with?
Anne-Marie, that just came out yesterday, so a lot of these details are still being firmed up today. And so we are expecting that they will be mourning with the community is what they have said, and that would likely include meeting with those community leaders as well as faith-based leaders. The president, though, did say yesterday that we must all work together to address the hate that remains the stain on the soul of America. And so we expect him to be healing along with this community this Tuesday.
All right, Nancy Chen, thank you very much, Nancy. So sadly, that was not the only mass shooting this weekend in this country. Investigators are working to determine the motive behind another mass shooting. This one was at a church about 45 miles south of Los Angeles. 1 person is dead and 5 were hurt. 4 of them suffered serious injuries. Police say the pastor hit the gunman on the head with a chair and parishioners tied him up. Officials describe the suspect as an Asian man in his 60s. They don't think he's from the area, and they don't know yet whether the attack on a Taiwanese church was a hate crime. Now, the Supreme Court is expected to release decisions today on some of its cases, and one of the major cases still pending is, of course, the case to overturn Roe v. Wade. Thousands of people rallied this weekend in support of abortion rights. Marches took place across the country and in cities like Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Seattle. Meanwhile, Nebraska's governor is the latest conservative lawmaker to announce plans to restrict abortions at the state level. Governor Ricketts said that he will call a special legislative session to enact an anti-abortion rights law if Roe v. Wade is overturned. The justices are expected to release decisions at 10 Eastern this morning. There are several cases pending, and the high-profile fight over abortion rights is, of course, one of them. Just one of them. As major decisions come down, we're going to bring you updates and analysis throughout the morning. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is partially blaming the nationwide baby formula shortage on one manufacturer. On Face the Nation yesterday, Margaret Brennan asked him why it took the government so long to react after bacteria was found in formula made by Abbott Nutrition.
The administration acted from day one after the recall, taking steps like creating more flexibility for the WIC program to help rebalance the availability of formula in the states. There are more actions that are underway, including looking at imports. But fundamentally, we are here because a company was not able to guarantee that its plant was safe, and that plant has shut down.
But that is the federal government's job as regulators to help ensure
as
safety
regulators,
of the
yes,
plant.
but let's be very clear. This is a capitalist country. The government does not make baby formula, nor should it. Companies make formula. And one of those companies, a company which, by the way, seems to have 40% market share, messed up and is unable to confirm that a plant, a major plant, is safe and free of contamination. So the most important thing to do right now, of course, is to get that plant in Michigan up and running safely. And that's the work that's going on between the company and the FDA. It's got to be safe, and it's got to be up and running as soon as possible. But this is the difference between a supply chain problem, in other words, a problem about moving goods around, and a supply problem, which has to do with whether they're being produced in the first place. Now, the administration's also been working with other companies to try to surge their production. That's led to an increase in production, which is helping to compensate. But at the end of the day, this plant needs to come back online safely.
So in just a few minutes, we're going to go live to Capitol Hill. That's where Nicole Killian is standing by. She's been talking with lawmakers about the formula shortage and has an update on what the House plans to do about it this week. Russia's military offensive in Ukraine is forcing some of its neighbors to beef up their security and race to form new alliances with NATO. Finland's president announced that it will end its years of neutrality in Europe and seek NATO membership, risking potential retaliation from Moscow. Sweden also officially confirmed plans to join. Our Charlie D'Agata reports from Ukraine.
In making its NATO bid official, Finland's president heralded a new era.
We have today a historic day. Finland will maximize its security.
Maximize its security against a neighbor it can no longer trust in Russia. Sweden was next, announcing the end of 200 years of military non-alignment, the prime minister calling Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine not only illegal but indefensible. It comes as Ukrainian military officials say Russian forces have withdrawn from Ukraine's second largest city of Kharkiv. And new British military intelligence reports that Russia has lost around a third of its ground forces deployed in Ukraine. And despite small-scale advances, Russia has failed to achieve substantial territorial gains over the past month. The Ukrainian military released drone footage of a river crossing its stopped Russian tanks and armored vehicles destroyed. But the pushback hasn't stopped Russian airstrikes and long-range artillery, and we've witnessed the destruction ourselves.
Well, the high-profile defamation trial involving Johnny Depp and Amber Heard picks back up again today. The trial was on hold last week, but jurors will be back in the courtroom this morning. So find out when we will hear from Heard again and who else the defense plans to call to the stand. And Ed O'Keefe has been talking to his sources at the White House. We're going to hear from him about how the Biden administration is responding to the mass shooting in Buffalo and the overall issue of gun violence.
original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow.
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes,
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 Minutes, 60 Minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel. Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like. Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Well, the time now is 7:17 in Beijing, where China just pulled out of hosting the 2023 AFC Asia Cup. That's the Asian Football Confederation. It was scheduled for June and July of next year across 10 cities, but China is still trying to contain a COVID crisis in some regions. We're going to have more on that in a few minutes. In the meantime, it's 7:17 here in New York City. CBS News Mornings is back with a look at some of the stories that you may have missed while you were offline. Staying in China now, businesses in Shanghai are reopening today after a multiple-week COVID lockdown. Supermarkets, malls, and restaurants are once again accepting a limited number of customers. The city could see restrictions lifted completely by June 1st. Pennsylvania's lieutenant governor is recovering after suffering a stroke last week. John Fetterman is the frontrunner in tomorrow's Democratic Senate primary. He has vowed to stay in the race. The 52-year-old says a blood clot caused the stroke and he did not suffer any cognitive damage. And people who looked at the skies in some parts of the world last night got to see a majestic super blood moon. For a few minutes, our planet was positioned directly between the sun and the moon. The moon fell completely into Earth's shadow, making it appear red. So meantime, anger is growing across the Middle East after Israeli riot police beat mourners at a funeral procession for a Palestinian-American journalist. An investigation is now officially underway. And Ian Lee has the latest from Jerusalem.
Even in death, Shireen Abu Akleh couldn't find peace. Last Friday, Israeli police attacked her funeral procession in Jerusalem with clubs. The police say they were provoked.
There were no clashes. We were merely carrying the casket.
Lena idolized her journalist aunt.
For the past 25 years, she's been an icon.
But Lena worried about her safety. Shireen tried to reassure her.
We're protected by our vest, and they can see it says capital letters press.
Shireen was wearing that vest when eyewitnesses say an Israeli soldier shot the Palestinian American. Israel says they're investigating the killing while not claiming responsibility. American officials also called for an objective investigation.
It's important to have accountability to show that Israel cannot get away with another crime.
Do you think you'll get accountability?
We really hope so.
As a journalist, Shireen fought to tell the truth. Now her family is fighting to know what truly happened to her. Ian Lee, CBS News, Jerusalem.
Now back to the war in Ukraine and people fighting to document allegations of Russian war crimes. 60 Minutes spoke to the founder of Bellingcat. That's a team of online detectives carefully collecting data about the atrocities on the ground. Here is part of that conversation.
We can see a Russian armored column.
We met Elliot Higgins last month in London as Bellingcat was building a database of social media exposing apparent war crimes in Ukraine. Eyewitness accounts of attacks on neighborhoods, assaults on hospitals, and murders of civilians are being collected and published on Bellingcat's website for all to see.
This is actually the location where the woman was killed.
Nearly everyone in Ukraine is a witness with a camera. Bellingcat is combining tens of thousands of social media posts to make them searchable by place and time.
And we look at as many sources as possible and use those sources to build a picture of what happened. Videos, photographs, satellite imagery. Then we look at the witness statements and the various allegations made by either side.
Locations and times are corroborated with independent sources, including satellite images and Google Street View. The goal is to provide verified evidence for future criminal trials.
And it also means that we're collecting an archive of material that for future generations, they can go back and look at this material. I mean, it's often said that, history is written by the victors, but it's being written now and it's being preserved now.
Ukraine is the biggest project in Bellingcat's short career. Higgins started Bellingcat in 2014 as sort of an accidental activist.
I was not someone with a professional background. I was doing this merely as a hobby.
What were you doing for a living at the time?
I was working for a company that housed refugees in the UK. I then worked for a company that manufactured pipes and then a company that manufactured lingerie. So I had a wide range of experience, but nothing that was directly related to conflict.
On his off hours, the conflict in Syria fascinated him, especially how social media was exposing atrocities there. You found your calling.
Indeed, I did.
Well, you can see the full interview with the founder of Bellingcat tomorrow right here on CBS News. It streams at 8 p.m. Eastern. Congress is set to address the nationwide baby formula shortage this week with efforts to boost supply. Congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is on Capitol Hill now. Nicole, good morning. What can parents expect?
Yeah, well, hopefully parents can expect more formula on store shelves. The measures that the House is considering certainly aim to try to get to the bottom of the supply issue. Lawmakers are working on a bill that would help the U.S. buy more formula from other countries like Mexico and Ireland, for instance, to increase supply. They're also going to consider a bill that would loosen some of the restrictions in the WIC program, which aids low-income families. And despite calls for the White House to use the Defense Production Act to produce more formula, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi argues that it's not legally possible. Now, this week, the FDA Commissioner Robert Califf will appear before a congressional committee where he is expected to face, as you can imagine, a lot of tough questions about this shortage and the federal response. A House Oversight panel has also requested more information from the major manufacturers of infant formula to find out what they're doing to ramp up production. Anne-Marie?
What I keep sort of thinking when I hear about all these measures is that, some of them really have to do with a problem with the system that's really only going to fix future problems. So I guess my question to you is, realistically, will any of these measures actually boost supply for mothers?
Well, I think that is the big question. Obviously, we haven't seen the details of some of the legislation that the House is proposing, but certainly, one of the more short-term fixes would be trying to procure more infant formula from other countries until the U.S. can increase its supply. I did talk to Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro last week about this, and she said they are trying to work on some measures to deal with the short-term issues because they know, as you point out, there are some kind of longer-term issues to try to get legislation to prevent something like this from happening in the future. But there's also that short-term immediate need to simply get more formula on store shelves.
Yeah, well, all parents want to know is when will there be more formula on the shelf? Do we have any idea?
Well, again, I think the devil is in the details in terms of the legislation that the House is putting forth. And again, we have not seen that yet, but certainly many lawmakers are aware of the acute need that is out there. As I mentioned, we will hear from the FDA commissioner this week, who is expected to get grilled over this issue. And then he will be appearing before Congress the following week as well. And as I mentioned, you've got the House Oversight Panel now pressing some of these manufacturers about what they're doing to ramp up supply. And the chair of that panel, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, told me that if she does not get the information back that she needs from these companies by the end of the month, she would consider potentially calling them before the committee.
All right, Nicole, thank you. So 61 million people are facing a severe weather threat on the East Coast today. Massive wind gusts are expected to leave a trail of damage from Baltimore to New Jersey. So let's bring in meteorologist Jordan Steele from our partners at the Weather Channel. Jordan, it looks like there's also a chance of tornadoes. Is that true?
Well, good morning, Anne Marie. Yes, I would say all modes of severe weather are possible. Since you brought up the tornado threat, let's go ahead and talk about that first, and then we'll get into everything else. So today, along the eastern seaboard, our torque-con value is between a 2 and a 3. Remember, the greater the number, the greater the threat, and our number threshold goes up to 10. So it's not a 0, but it's also not a 5 or a 6. I think atmospherically speaking, we have more of a wind damage potential for today as the storms really get fired up as we head into the afternoon and the evening time frame. So we need to make sure we're weather aware during the evening commute, dinner time, and maybe for some of you as we get into the bedtime time frame. So there's a look at all the area that we're going to be focused on as we head into the day today. This, looking at what we're going to be tapping into, we've already got crazy dew points this morning in the 50s and 60s for the eastern seaboard. So there's a lot of fuel for these storms to really tap into, plus the warmth today. And there's already action out to the west. And so all this will be moving from the western side eastward. But once we get into the afternoon and evening, look at how the storms really intensify and they bow out here. So that's why we're looking at a good, wind damage potential. Power lines down. There could be some power outages and trees down with this as it works its way through the northeast and eventually pushes offshore as we head into the overnight hours. So again, the big threshold will be for later on this afternoon. And the rest of the weather story is going to be the record heat that we could be looking at for the southern half of the country. Wow, from the Lone Star State out into Arizona. Anne Marie, you could catch all day coverage featuring our virtual view technology on the Weather Channel television network.
Thanks a lot, Jordan. They're already dealing with all kinds of heat problems down there. Thank you so much. You can also get the latest on the weather in your area by heading on over to the CBS News app. It gives you access to all of our CBS News national and local streams for free anytime, anywhere. We're continuing to follow the investigation into the racially motivated shooting of 13 people at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York. Later on this hour, I'm going to be speaking with Erie County, New York Sheriff about where the investigation stands right now. And coming up, though, later on Red and Blue, Nicole Killian will speak with Pennsylvania Congressman Conrad Lamb. They'll discuss his campaign for Senate ahead of tomorrow's primary and the chances of turning that red seat blue. You can stream that conversation in our 6 p.m. Eastern hour. We'll be right back.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
Incredibly big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like,
wow! Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story, Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers? They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes.
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 minutes, 60 minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel. Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like. Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail. We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to CBS News Mornings. The time now is 7:31. Let's get you caught up on some of the news that you may have missed. The President and First Lady are preparing to visit Buffalo, New York, following a deadly, racially motivated shooting at a grocery store. 11 of the 13 shooting victims were black, and the shooter was white. Only 3 of the victims survived. Thousands gathered in the streets across the U.S. this weekend to support abortion rights. The protests were held ahead of the expected release of new Supreme Court decisions this morning. The official opinion on the abortion rights case that could overturn Roe v. Wade is still pending. And Congress will work to address the nationwide baby formula shortage this week through a number of bills that hope to increase supply. One piece of legislation under consideration would allow the U.S. to import more formula from international suppliers. Well, Buffalo police have released the names of all 13 victims in this weekend's mass shooting at a supermarket. They range in age from 20 to 86 years old and include people like retired Buffalo police officer Aaron Salter and the security guard at the Tops on the day of the shooting, and Ruth Whitfeld, the mother of the city's retired fire commissioner. Jerika Duncan is in Buffalo with what she's learned about the victims so far.
Why this Tops on this side of town? There's a reason why he picked this location. You have the blacks secluded to the east side. If you live over here, this is the only grocery store you really have access to.
No one could have expected the chaotic scene that unfolded at this Tops grocery store in Buffalo.
I couldn't get out the back door. I kept hearing them closer and closer.
Keishanti Atkinson says she was working at the cash register when the gunman opened fire. She hid with co-workers in a back conference room, and they barricaded the door with a table.
So you're in there praying that he doesn't come?
Yeah, and I was instructing all my co-workers to just please be quiet so he won't hear us.
The shooting started around 2:30 on Saturday afternoon.
Possible active shooter at the Tops. This might be an individual with body armor.
Police say the accused gunman had driven roughly 200 miles from Conklin, New York, to kill black people, and that he was spotted there Friday, the day before the shooting.
If you ask me right now, is that kid I talked to on Friday racist?
I would tell you no.
Brady Lewis said he spoke to the suspected gunman for more than an hour that day outside the supermarket. He said the topics range from time travel to critical race theory.
You think he would have tried to kill you?
I don't know, because obviously he don't like black people, but I don't know if he would have shot me or not.
Authorities called the alleged gunman a racially motivated violent extremist.
He took my sister. He took my sister who I talk to every day.
Among the victims is 72-year-old Catherine Massey, whose sister and niece took us into her home.
No, I'm just saying, some of her favorites.
Yeah. Yeah.
They told us she was a beloved pillar of the Buffalo community.
Kat was our cheerleader.
She was a matriarch of
Yeah.
the family.
She was. You need something, if she can do it, she would do it for you.
We also spoke to TOPS employee Zaire Goodman, who survived a gunshot wound to the neck. The 20-year-old chose not to be on camera.
I can see you kind of bouncing up and down. And what's the emotion that you're feeling right now?
Discomfort, sadness, maybe a bit of regret.
Regret? Why?
I wonder why out of all the people the 3 people that were spared, I was one of them.
Well, President Biden is visiting Buffalo tomorrow to meet with people within that community. He called Saturday's attack, quote, a hate-fueled domestic terrorism. Meanwhile, politicians in New York are demanding federal action on gun control. Ed O'Keefe is at the White House covering this angle of the story for us. Ed, good morning. I mean, I know we have to have these conversations, Ed, but it just feels like every time there's a shooting, we start to talk about gun control again, and nothing really changes.
Yep, that's true, Anne-Marie. Whether it's the Buffalo shooting, whether it's the shootings over the weekend in Texas, California, Milwaukee, North Carolina, or, of course, the gun violence that seems to plague every weekend in spring and summer Chicago, there is no sign that Congress or the White House is going to be able to tackle domestic extremism or regulate firearms anytime soon. The president spoke at a police memorial event Sunday here in Washington. He made a mention of the shooting in Buffalo. He called for unity. He did not mention the push for gun control. He has taken some steps to crack down on gun violence through executive action, and just on Friday held an event with mayors and police chiefs here at the White House to urge them to use some of the federal pandemic relief money they've received in the last 2 years to boost police and public safety budgets. But Democrats, as they've tried for years, have been blocked from passing gun control legislation in the House and the Senate, not just from opposition from Republicans, but also some fellow moderate Democrats concerned about doing so. And meanwhile, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says her chamber is going to try again in the coming days and weeks to pass legislation designed to curb domestic extremism. There's been some disagreement in the Democratic caucus about how exactly to proceed, and there will be Republican opposition as well to establishing new offices that would do this at the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and other parts of the federal government to track violent extremism. But again, whether it's shootings at flea markets, supermarkets, churches, classrooms, outside NBA games, or inside shopping malls, there is no sign that the White House and Congress is going to take action anytime soon to curb violent extremism or gun violence.
No, not at all. Ed, let me ask you this. You know, officials say that there were warning signs about the Buffalo shooter. Is there any legislation that is being discussed that would have prevented the shooter from having his weapon or carrying out the attack?
I mean, unless he was already characterized as mentally ill, there aren't necessarily there isn't necessarily legislation that would address that. I mean, this is the issue: is you're dealing primarily here in these situations with adults who may or may not have mental health issues. You're dealing with ideology that they believe in. How do you regulate that necessarily? What is the definition of a violent extremist? What is the definition of extremism? Who exactly should federal agents be targeting to avoid that? What kinds of groups? And by doing so, what kind of other things are you potentially bumping up against legally if you do that? That's what makes this so difficult. And then, of course, there's just the classic, do you want to regulate the size and scope of firearms? Who exactly can own them? What exactly they can shoot out? That is a sort of classic debate that's raged for years that neither side can come to an agreement on. And the only thing that will ever get that changed, probably, is a supermajority of some sort in either or both houses of Congress and a president who agrees with them. Yeah. And both parties, frankly, for that matter, depending on how you look at this, are far off from that.
Yep, indeed. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much. So we're going to talk about your money coming up next. If you follow the stock market, you know things have not been looking up lately. Coming up, I'm going to be speaking with the deputy editor of Barron's about the likelihood that we're headed into a bear market and what that means for your investments. But first, it is 7:39 on the East Coast. Time to check your local weather.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like, wow!
Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there are hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes,
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 minutes, 60 minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions? Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel. Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like. Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me!
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Futures slipped this morning ahead of the stock market opening for the week. They also indicate that the major indexes will continue their downward spiral. S&P 500 futures dipped about 0.7% and Dow Jones futures dropped 0.5%. CEOs are making more than ever before. The median pay package in 2021 jumped up to $14.7 million. That's according to analysis from the Wall Street Journal. Most saw an increase of at least 12%, setting a record for the 6th year in a row. And when the market opens today, many are worried that it will continue to drop toward a bear market. That's when commodities fall significantly over a period of time. And this wouldn't be the first time the U.S. has experienced one. A new article from Barron's looks into past bear markets to give us an idea of what could happen in the near future. So Ben Levinson, deputy editor of Barron's, wrote that article and is joining us now to explain things. Ben, thanks for joining us. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. I believe I learned that from Dr. Phil, but apparently it applies to the stock market as well. What have you learned?
Well, I mean, with so much of what happens in the market, we can find analogs in the past. The bad news for that is that there are a lot of different things that we can compare it to. And so there are people that we call bulls who are very optimistic about the market and bears who think that it's going down. And they're always looking for history to back up their views. Right now, we're in a kind of moment where it's really hard to know which one is right. The market has fallen, the S&P 500 has fallen almost 20%, which would be characterized as a bear market, but not quite. And the stock market does this actually quite a bit. There have been a number of cases where it falls almost 20%, almost into that bear, but doesn't quite get there. And in those cases, you can often get a nice bounce in the stock market. The problem is we just don't know if this is one of those cases. I think the good news, though, is that the market is a lot cheaper than it was at the start of the year.
Right. So that means I guess some people could benefit if you know how to play that, how to invest. What can individual investors do to protect their investments?
Well, I think for most of us, the protection comes almost beforehand. When you hear people getting really excited about the market and talk about how it never goes down, and you have to start buying these stocks when your cab driver is telling you about stocks, that's the kind of moment where you want to say, hey, you know what? I think I need to be a little more cautious. Mm-hmm. We're actually in a moment right now where probably the best thing to do is to take a look at an asset allocation and make sure that it's the right one for your age group. So if you're someone who's fairly young and just starting to invest, you have a very long time horizon. And this pullback might not be a bad time to start actually putting a little more money into the stock market. But the older that you get, you have to be a little more cautious. But there's still that kind of rule where you take your age and you subtract it from 100, and that's the percentage of stocks you should have in your portfolio. Mm. And so, for someone like me who is now almost 50, I want to have half my portfolio in stocks and maybe half in bonds. And you can play around with that number, but it's a time to make sure you have that allocation right.
If you're not invested at all, could you still feel the impact of this market?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that we've seen is that this has really changed the way companies are going about allocating money. There were a lot of companies that right after the pandemic, especially a lot of the hot tech companies that we were talking about during that period, things like Zoom, Amazon, they were hiring a lot of people, and they might have hired too many people. They might have built out too much infrastructure. And it's still up in the air whether companies are going to have to dial that back a little bit, where they hired too much and built too much for the economic environment that we're going to have. For now, though, it really does seem to be primarily a market event where the market is adjusting from being quite expensive at the beginning of the year to more moderately expensive now, though not cheap.
Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actress Amber Heard is expected to take the stand again today in the defamation case filed by her ex-husband Johnny Depp. Coming up, Carter Evans has a look at what to expect as Depp's team gets ready to cross-examine Heard. And a reminder, we will be live streaming the trial on our app. So now is as good a time as ever to make sure that you've got the app on all your devices. Our app gives you the best of CBS News all in one place. We'll be right back.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars.
Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.
I have no idea how much money I have made over the past year. That's like,
wow! Big rewards.
There's gold in them, there are hills, as they say.
Bigger risks.
The market's down, but it's gonna bounce back. It's crypto.
Is it a gold rush or fool's gold?
It's our metaverse, our story. Peace out, y'all.
An original documentary from CBS Reports. Stream now.
I'm Nora O'Donnell in our nation's capital. We're here at the White House with the President of the United States.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We've never done an interview like this before.
That's correct.
Tonight, a congressional investigation sparked by reporting from CBS News. What's your message to consumers?
They need help now. Tell him I feel it.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell from Washington, D.C. on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
We will witness yet another moment in history.
This week on 60 Minutes.
That's incredible.
The 60 Minutes.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
Are you ready for some tough questions?
Let me ask you this.
You know how this sounds.
What's your response to that?
60 Minutes Sundays on CBS.
The threat of severe weather and dangerous tornadoes is expected to last.
Let's get the forecast from our partners at the Weather Channel. Here we are in our virtual view.
Now 6 feet of water, imagine that. Cars that can act like battering rams.
These hyper-realistic simulations show you what the weather will look and feel like before it happens.
This is our virtual view, what it actually looks like. Those are some of the best graphics I've seen.
Spare no expense, Gail.
We experience the weather in a whole new way.
Go to the ends of the earth
Right now.
We got something crazy.
and reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait,
There's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
innovative,
Da-da-da-da.
and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We have an inspiring story that started with a strange act of kindness.
We found it.
You're kidding me?
We share stories that lift you up and brighten your day.
The Uplift. Stream on the free CBS News app.
Well, actress Amber Heard is back on the stand this morning in the defamation case against her. Carter Evans has been following this trial, and he tells us what we can expect this week.
While Johnny Depp's arrivals at a Virginia courthouse look more like red carpet premieres, on the stand, the actor is adamant.
I've never struck a woman in my life.
His ex-wife Amber Heard tearfully detailed gripping allegations of sexual and physical abuse.
My head was bashing against the back of the bar and I couldn't breathe.
Heard's sister could soon take the stand for the defense, along with Johnny Depp's ex-girlfriend, Ellen Barkin.
How important is it that Amber Heard have some witnesses to corroborate her story?
Oh, it's vital.
Attorney Kimberly Lau is following the trial.
If they are credible witnesses, then I think it could really hurt Depp's case. All she has to show is that there is at least one instance of domestic violence.
Depp is suing his ex for $50 million, claiming she defamed him in a Washington Post op-ed. On social media, Heard is facing repeated attacks from Depp supporters who say she's simply acting on the stand.
There certainly is a lot of victim shaming going on online. It would deter future victims from wanting to move forward and publicly speak out.
The judge wants to hear closing arguments by May 27th. Carter Evans, CBS News.
So the trial is scheduled to start again at 10 a.m. Eastern. Once Heard takes the stand, we'll bring you her testimony live right here on CBS News. Well, the Department of Justice is investigating this weekend shooting at a grocery store in Buffalo, New York as, quote, racially motivated violent extremism. So for more on what's happening with the investigation right now, I want to bring in Erie County, New York Sheriff John Garcia. His office is one of the agencies involved in the case. Thank you so much for joining us right now. You know, I can't imagine what you thought when you first heard about this incident. I just want to start off by getting your sort of basic reaction to the news that there was a mass shooting in a neighborhood in Buffalo, New York.
It was absolutely horrible. The horrific scene, as you can imagine, the damage that the rounds of an assault rifle do to a human body. And aside from the victims and their families, my concern is also to the deputies and the officers that responded to the scene.
Yeah, of course. So let's talk about the case where it stands so far. Officials are investigating. This is a hate crime. The suspect pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder charges. What is next in this investigation?
Anne-Marie, it is straight up hate crime. An individual came in here, drove 3.5 hours into our community to spew hate and kill innocent people that were just shopping on a beautiful Saturday day in Buffalo. So he's going to appear in court today. He pled not guilty. I think obviously it's going to be a very tough job for the criminal defense attorney in this case. There's video evidence and there's many witnesses. And, you know, there's going to be two investigations, parallel investigations that are going to be led by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then also by local police, the Buffalo Police Department and ourselves, along with the Erie County District Attorney's Office. In one case, the District Attorney's Office, the maximum penalty would be life without parole. In the case with the federal government, there is a chance for the death penalty, but I understand there is a moratorium that's been put in place by President Biden.
And we're also hearing from police that the suspect live streamed the attack on social media. What does that tell you about his motivation?
So disturbing. You know, he put a GoPro on his helmet, drove around the supermarket directly behind us. In fact, he did some reconnaissance the day before, and he picked out this location because it was a store that was frequented by African Americans. So his target was African Americans. His hatred was towards African Americans, Jews, and also immigrants. So, I mean, his state of mind, obviously he had some mental health issues last year. His post-graduation school project was murder and suicide. What does that tell you about an individual? So you have a mixture of the mental health and just pure evil. And this person was still had the availability to purchase these weapons, and I find that very disturbing. I am a pro-Second Amendment sheriff. People that legally own handguns are not the issue, but in this case, sadly, he fell through the cracks, and this is something we can't allow to happen again.
No, because, you know, falling through the cracks could be deadly. Now, here we have a suspect who, you know, you talk about red flags all over the place with this suspect. People still have to go on with their lives, though, in this community. They're going to have to get up and go to work. They're going to have to go to the grocery store, you know, take care of their children. They are going to be terrified. What do you say to people about whether or not their community is safe? Because at this point, it probably doesn't feel very safe to a lot of people.
No, obviously, you know, in a case like this is what terrorists do, right? They try to disrupt the lives of the average person and instill fear. And the store behind us is the only shopping center here in this community, and it's frequented by many people. We lost a life here, a retired Buffalo police officer working security, you know, trying to make a few extra bucks for his family, confronted the individual, and he shot at him, but the individual had a plate in his vest, and you know, it was basically a pea shooter against an assault rifle, and the assault rifle won that battle. But I'll tell you, Aaron Salter is a hero. He stopped this individual from continuing through the store, and this happened within a minute. Buffalo Police Department officers arrived on scene within a minute and a half, and they did what they're trained to do, was engage, confront, and as they confronted him, this individual had his assault rifles to his chin, and thank God he didn't level that and shoot both officers. He gave himself up, and and thank goodness for that. So within 5 hours from the beginning of the shooting to him being in our custody at the Erie County Holding Center on suicide watch, 5 hours transpired. So law enforcement, first responders did a fantastic job, bravery, courage, but you know, this community, instead of rioting and so forth, came together peacefully, black, white, Hispanic. They did a march. People are angry, but I have to say that the pastors, the community, the mayor of the city of Buffalo, everybody calmed you know, the tensions down. And that's why we're here today, walking through the scene, for people to see that, you know, we're here to protect and serve.
Well, you know, you talk about just, it was a minute, not very much time. You can see how much damage was done, but also how much worse it could have been if not for the officers who jumped in, if not for that former officer who shot back. It is heartbreaking, and it angers me to hear about the suspect being better protected, better armed than the people we pay to protect us, who put their lives on the line. Sheriff John Garcia, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And, you know, our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers are with your community and also with your officers. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. CBS Mornings is next.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
It's gonna be big!
The metaverse, the virtual world that's become a cryptocurrency casino.
It's like buying property on Mars. Do they get an actual picture of this? No, it's a digital copy. Why would they pay for that?
Making millionaires almost overnight.
We made more than $1 million in crypto last year.